Welcome, everybody. My name's John Bandler, and welcome you to the latest edition of Electrical and Computer Engineering Department 3-minute thesis event that's coming up in April. We have a briefing session today, which we have calling Engaging Real People in 3 Realistic Minutes. Delighted to be co-presented by Tim Davidson.
Sorry, what about the question?
Please put yourselves on mute, avoiding feedback, etc. So, without further ado, Nick, introduce yourself. We'll all introduce ourselves, and it's the easiest way to do it, and say why we're here and what brings us to the table.
Right, so hello everyone. My name is Nicholas, or Nick Simard. I'm an industrial PhD candidate in electrical and computer engineering. I've worked with Dr. Bandler on the 3MT ECE 790 last year, and this is our second go at it today. I love doing these types of oral communication and presentations, so I will be a bit of a coach and a mentor as well along the way. And I look forward to learning about each and everyone's research. Last year when we did this, it was fascinating to see as well the progress that some individuals make from start to finish. So I'm very excited to get started and to hear about everything that you're up to. Thanks,
Nick. We're looking forward to working with you, and I think the students will benefit tremendously. Okay, Tim Davidson, who will be helping out significantly this year, I hope. He's kindly volunteered and former department chair.
Well, welcome everybody, and it has been a joy over the past decade to watch our students work their way through these things and to see what they have been able to do. As Nick said, it's just really exciting to see people blossom from shy, retiring, unsure people, over a matter of weeks into really confident, engaging presenters. And it's a life-changing skill, and it's a pleasure to be involved in helping you to get there.
Thanks so much, Tim. Looking forward to working with you. Having trouble with my mouse. There we are. Erin.
Hi, I'm Erin Kiley. I'm in the math department at the Massachusetts College of Liberal Arts. So probably the first to introduce myself today, who's not physically proximate to you there. But I've been working with John on the 3MT competitions for the International Microwave Symposium for, boy, what is this, 6 years running now?
Yeah, it's our 7th year.
Yeah. It seems like yesterday that we met and talked about the basics of good presentations and wondered why we weren't seeing more good presentations at IMS and thought maybe we should do something about that. So this was where the idea for bringing 3MT to IMS had been born, and I've been working with John on that for a bit now. I have to echo the sentiments shared previously about the thrill of watching people blossom into good presenters. Sorry, I'm a little bit sick today, as you could probably tell. But it is a thrill to watch people who maybe start out shy, maybe start out nervous in speaking English, to watch them hone their script, to watch them practice and become real showstoppers on the stage. I hope that that's every one of you, and I look forward to seeing the end result. Yeah.
Thanks, Erin. Thanks so much for joining us. Connor Rowe, we're delighted to have you here. Tell us about yourself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Connor Rowe. I'm a master's student in Quebec currently, working as part of the ultra-fast optical processing group. I did a 3MT last year at IMS, and John and Erin Kelly were some of the big names that directed everyone into making their presentations to some astonishing finalists. And I just really enjoy the 3MT experience. In a sense, it's the most extreme trial by fire way of learning communication, which is very, very valuable.
Great. Thanks so much, Connor. And Megan, who's coming to us from Germany right now.
Hello, everyone. So I'm Megan. I'm a PhD candidate in the medical sciences program. I'm currently in Germany as I'm doing an internship at a company here. I met Dr. Bandler a few years ago now when I was competing in the McMaster-wide 3-minute thesis competition. And from there, we discovered a common interest in knowledge translation and communication. And I've served as a judge for this course 3-minute thesis competition a few times now. And yeah, it's an absolute pleasure to be here today.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much, Megan. I really appreciate you being with us. So, suggestion for people watching, avoid virtual backgrounds if you can. It's just a habit that I have saying that. I would suggest hiding non-video participants so you can have a less cluttered screen. And you could scale the slide. You can scale that slide and reduce the size of that slide by moving a partition on your screen left, right, and until you have a slide size that's kind of acceptable. You don't, unless you want the slide to take up the entire real estate on your screen. So at this point, I'd like Dr. Bakr, if he's still with us, to say a few words, and Dr. Bruce, if he's there, say a few words of welcome.
So I can step in, John?
Yeah, hi there, Mohamed. Nice.
Yeah, so good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to ACE 790. We're lucky to have with us Dr. Bandler, who has been taking care of this course for many years. He's an expert really in communicating ideas, and I'm not sure how many of you here know that I'm his previous student, and he actually working with him affected a lot my presentation skills. I actually see affect them dramatically, improve them dramatically. So I look forward to seeing your presentations after you have been gone through the course, and I look forward to an exciting a set of presentations. Thanks, Sergeant, for inviting me.
Thanks so much, Mohamed. Really appreciate it. Is Ian Bruce there by chance?
Yes. Yeah, I'm here,
John.
Good.
Okay.
Hi, John. So yeah, thanks everyone. So I'm the currently Associate Chair for Grad Studies in ECE, finishing up my second 3-year term at the moment. So I'll finish up in this job in June. But it's been really great over the last few years, first to do some ECE 3-minute thesis competitions initially with John and his expertise, and then seeing how well those went, taking the dive of transitioning ECE 790 to this format. And as mentioned, I think by Connor, I think some students found it a little intimidating at first to switch from our old technical poster presentation format to this 3MT format. But as has been mentioned by several people, I think it's really borne a lot of fruit. I think it's been much more interesting for the students and the attendees for this format. And I think the presentation skills that people have developed, I've seen in my own students, as well as students whose supervisory committees or defense committees I've been in. I've seen that the presentation skills that they develop in this course translate also into technical presentations, and particularly that confidence to present, as well as a lot of the things that John teaches on presentation style, how to connect with your audience. I see that carrying over to technical presentation. So to the students enrolled this term, I hope you engage well with the workshop and the coaching, and I look forward to seeing your presentations at the end of term.
Thanks so much, Ian. Really appreciate your support over the years. First, a rather sad note that marine biologist and expedition leader Robin Aiello, a good friend of mine, passed away in January. Some of you know her, some of you have heard her, have seen her online. I met her in Antarctica when my wife and I were on an expedition just before the pandemic hit. For the best part of 2 years, she got involved in this particular course and in helping out, in coaching and mentoring. So really, it's a very sad note to tell you that Robin Aiello has died in January. Okay, I want to move fairly rapidly towards the videos that we will be showing. We'll be showing 2 videos, Mahmoud Waghi and Connor Rowe. Connor is with us today. Mahmoud was unable to join us because of another engagement. So we have a whole bunch of things to talk about. I think you can let your eyes take in the agenda that you can see there. A little note, little plug for a film that I worked on in 2021, and Megan was involved in that. So it shows you that you can graduate to filmmaking after doing this. Anyway, thanks, Megan, for your contribution there. So we'll be dealing with a whole bunch of different things, and I'm not going to be reading everything on the slides. I'll just let you take in some of the words. There's an incredible number of facets, features, attributes, ideas that are involved in communication. Human communication is probably the most complex thing we can be involved in. It involves everything from fraud, authenticity, bias, ethics, setbacks, telling the truth, not telling the truth. It just goes on and on. So there's so much involved. And where you are presenting is also important. Is it a classroom? Is it in person? Is it online? Is it to an interviewer, an online interview, an off-camera interviewer, an on-camera interviewer, etc. So there's so many different media, and we're not going to be covering all of these, obviously. Now, just a quick word here that any of the guests or co-presenters, please interrupt me anytime, jump in anytime with anything that comes to mind. We will definitely be getting into the meat of the conversation once we play those videos shortly, but do feel free to jump in with anything that comes to your mind. The bottom line with 3-minute thesis, it's a 3-minute or less oral presentation supported by one static PowerPoint slide. And there are 2 principal criteria by which it's judged: comprehension and content on the one hand, engagement and communication on the other. And if you go to the University of Queensland's website, you can see a long list of what these 2 criteria, these 2 main criteria actually entail. A quick summary of them is there are no props. You're not allowed to hold up props like this. You're not allowed to read from anything, either from this or from a piece of paper. You're disqualified if it's a competition, if you go over 3 minutes. There's no singing, no dancing, you know, it's spoken word, and so on. Now, this is not a competition, but we're using the same rules as in the competition. And I'm going to show you a few slides before we get to the videos to give you a kind of a heads up as to what's coming and what you should be noticing in those videos. No jargon, avoiding acronyms, avoid getting stuck in the details, clever use of metaphors, clever use of human stories, and so on and so forth, certain do's and don'ts. So in the 2 case studies we're going to look at in a moment, look for metaphor, look for whether you believe the person who's speaking, look for purposeful gestures. Does the candidate gesture? Engaging with the slide or images, does the candidate appear to be looking you in the eye as I am now? Right now I'm looking into the camera. Are there dramatic pauses? There's so much that we take in subliminally in communication that we just overlook all of this. There's a plethora of things that go into communication, most of which we kind of ignore them consciously, but we take them in unconsciously or subconsciously. Look for storytelling, look for humor. So let's, unless anyone has something to question or comment on, let's jump straight into Mahmoud Waghi. And
I just have one quick thing before we get into the case study, and we'll go
Yeah.
through it a bit more, just to discuss a little bit about the aspects of the month and a bit ahead. Is that right now you're presented with the format of the 3MT, and you've got three things at your disposal. You've got 3 minutes or less, you've got a static slide, and you've got your script. Although that seems very limiting right now, what we're going to teach you in just over a month and a bit is how to add some pieces, how to add some tools to your toolbox to make your speech and effectively your 3MT a lot more improved and a lot more convincing. And that comes with gestures, intonation, and different tools that we'll teach you along the way. So I just kind of wanted to give a quick glimpse of that before we get into some of these case studies.
Great, thanks, Nick. More on the other side as well. So Mohamed Waghi was a second place winner at IEEE IMS or Microwave Week 2020, Smart Textiles for Recycling Radio Waste. So let's play that and talk about it on the other side.
Imagine if all rain was wasted. That doesn't sound right. Thankfully, this doesn't really happen to rain, but the same happens right now to power. Wireless networks, 5G, even Wi-Fi, waste power, and our electronics are thirsty for power. You don't hear anyone saying, I'm satisfied with my battery life, because we dream of a sustainable, connected world. A world where you don't have to charge and replace batteries every single day. Imagine charging hundreds of batteries. Think about their disposal, the waste, and our planet. This is not the connected world we want. My name is Mahmoud Waghi, and my research brings recycling to rescue. And no, not household recycling.
I screwed that up. Let's jump straight into this. So sorry we didn't hear the whole thing. We'll definitely make sure we hear the whole of Conor Rowe's. But one thing we can certainly remember is Mahmoud opening with both hands raised in contemplation. Imagine if all the rain was wasted. That doesn't sound right. Thankfully, this doesn't really happen to rain. Does anybody want to comment on that?
I'll jump in.
Sure.
So there's a really impactful opening statement. Imagine if all the rain was wasted. That's something that gets you thinking. That's like a big exaggeration. So right away, I found that as soon as Mahmoud started, he had my attention with such a grabbing first sentence.
To expound on what Megan is saying as well, you'll find this especially in the introduction and the conclusion. What Mahmoud is trying to do is really evoke some imagery in your mind, right? And one of the tools he does that is he takes those pauses. Imagine if all the rain was wasted. Those pauses make it a lot more digestible for the audience to think of that imagery, think of all the rain wasting. And then you'll notice that after that imagery, he starts speeding up and starts getting to the content, getting to the bulk of his work. But when you really want to kind of evoke emotion into your audience, you'll take some of these a bit dramatic pauses so that the audience can listen, feel it, and then continue onwards with the rest.
Yeah. I'm going to show you the closing words in a moment. Anyone else? Erin, do you want to comment on that at all? Or?
Sure, yeah. About the dramatic pauses that give your audience time to imagine what it is that you're saying. The temptation really is to pack as much as possible into your speech because you have only the 3 minutes to speak. And at the beginning, you might write your script that way. By the end of the process of editing and paring it down, you will find where those pauses come in more or less naturally. So don't feel bad if you don't already have a script that includes pauses and is under 3 minutes. That's the end goal. You're getting there eventually. But that's what the process of working with editors is for.
Yeah, thanks, Erin. Really good input. Let me go to the closing. I'm having trouble with my mouse. Sorry about that. Well, sorry. Oh, closes with. Sorry, I'm a little forgetful. Sorry, we didn't hear the closing kind of part of the video. But here's how he closes. My goal is to get you to forget about your batteries. But please, and again, he pauses, he looks upwards as if he's imploring the heavens to open up and rain or not rain, as the case may be. Don't forget your umbrellas. So, anybody want to comment on these closing words? Some of you have heard the video before. I just think it's an incredible bookending of a script, and I personally think that his presentation is kind of a good blueprint, a good illustration of what really works. He starts off with rain, he ends with rain and umbrellas.
Exactly. That's one point I wanted to hit on as well. Exactly like you said, Dr. Bandler, it's a perfect bookend. And what we find with a lot of successful 3MTs is that when you start with your initial setting and your initial story, as Mahmoud did, and you finish with it, I feel like it brings the audience full circle to be like, oh, that's what he was talking about this whole time. So a very important technique that you're going to want to try and implement. But I love the thoughts resonated by Erin as well, is that this is a process. You know, you're gonna eventually get this neat packaged script. And it's a process to get there. We're just showing you some initial tools.
Yeah, and by the way, don't worry about all these stage directions. These are my interpretations of stage directions. You don't have to worry about those. Just write a script when we'll talk about pauses and emphasis and the choreography later on. Don't worry about those details just yet. Anybody else want to jump in before we go to Connor, who breaks some of these norms that we've just spoken about? Okay, so
well, I might just say quickly, I'm certainly glad he presented in 2020.
Yeah, I know. It's as I say, you know, it also depends on the event, whether it's in person, whether it's not in person. There are so many factors involved. We'll come to what makes yours work as well in a moment. So here we are, Connor Rowe, ultra fast light-based spectrogram, and he was the first place winner in 2022 International Microwave Symposium 3-minute thesis. Well deserved for sure. So we're going to play that video, and I'm going to keep my hands away to make sure that I don't screw this one up as well. So we'll listen to this and talk about it on the other side. But one of the things I should ask you to do is note the differences between this and Mahmoud Wagi, incredibly different.
Hi, I'm a master's student in Quebec at the INRS in Montreal, Canada. Let's talk about signal processing. Who here is a musician? A few people. Could anyone play this piece? Sheet music, like this, tells you, the musician, which notes or frequencies to play and when to play them. Frequency over time. Imagine instead, I draw you a picture of a wave, and your job is going to be, tell me how it's going to sound. That's not an easy job, especially when multiple notes are being played at the same time. So what's my point? Well, in comparison to looking at a signal just in time or just in frequency, showing both simultaneously is the most intuitive way to visualize a signal. The fancy name for this is a spectrogram. With a spectrogram, we can see how frequencies change over time. So what we want is sheet music for ultra-fast signals. Now, imagine again, you're at a concert for your favorite band. You'd probably notice if they decide to skip every note. Similarly, if they decide, instead of playing, to hand you a CD and say, you can listen to it later, you'd probably want your money back. Well, just like that, we want to catch every single note. And we want to process in real time, not record and listen later. So how fast is ultra fast? We're talking about frequencies millions of times higher than your ears are capable of hearing. Notes changing billions of times per second. That's ultra fast. And these signals, they're useful for secure communications, astrophysics, radar, and much, much more. So what's the problem? The problem is the best electronics in the world are not capable of dealing with these signals. They miss notes or they don't process in real time. Electronics are simply too slow. Enter photonics. Just like electronic processing uses electricity, photonic processing uses photons, particles of light. We can do signal processing using just light, and it's outstandingly faster. This light-based spectrogram we've developed allows you to tune into the concerts of ultra-fast events, hear the notes played by distant stars and galaxies, and ultimately allows you to play your own signals faster than ever before. Thank you.
Good, there we are. So let me just show you the two slides, the opening and closing. Hi, I'm Connor Rowe, master's student, etc. And then the closing, looking directly at the audience and his closing words. Rather than elaborate on this, let me ask Connor himself to comment on this. Why did you choose to introduce yourself at the beginning, for example? And how did you feel your presentation was bookended properly?
That's a very good question. I think I enjoy kind of introducing myself, and an introduction at the start of a presentation says, "This is me, I'm introducing myself to you, and this is what I'm going to talk about." So it kind of attaches the work to me in a small sense. In terms of rounding it off like a book ending, it was difficult for me, but I did still want to keep the theme of music and that analogy throughout the presentation.
Anybody else want to just comment on his opening and closing? Opening, closing. He has a very long sentence close to the end there. It's a pretty long sentence. Any comments?
I feel the need to jump up in defense of long sentences. I think that we should assume that our audience could understand them if we craft them clearly enough, and Connor has. I like his last sentence quite a bit. It continues this analogy that was made. I think that when we have in previous trainings talked about bringing things up to the audience's level rather than bringing things down to the audience's level. And I think Connor does that perfectly. He uses concepts that people are eminently familiar with, sheet music, going to a concert. And he helps them imagine what it might be like to understand his research through that lens. This is really bringing things up to the level of the audience, and the long sentence was a perfect way of capping it off.
Megan, any thoughts from you on this?
Yeah, so I like how it bookends in its own way, as Connor was just mentioning. So starts off with in the beginning with music. The slide also has music on it. It visibly has notes on it. And then in the final sentence, there's the mention of notes again. So to me, I thought that that was a really nice way for it to come full circle as we're talking about. And as a non-engineering person, still have that aha moment that Nick mentioned.
Right. No, I'll let's move on. We're still on him, still talking about Connor. Okay. Now I clocked him at 377 words, which is a lot. I mean, I do not recommend most people to go anywhere near that number. But you know, what Connor has going for him is incredibly clear, is incredibly precise. His voice is really, let's put it, if you like, he's the best person to talk about signal processing. I mean, he has a great voice. I think no machine will have any difficulty detecting his words. And the YouTube, I think YouTube got it completely correct, that the entire script, I went through it, I copied the transcript from the YouTube video, and it was spot on. So there was no mistaking what you said. A lot of the words are very short. There's really, I would say there's virtually nothing there that I would classify as frighteningly jargon filled. So look at that open the middle. That's the middle, and kind of take in some of those words. They are relatively short. There's no jargon that is, I would say, in terms of the way that I'm thinking of jargon. Now, you may be wondering why I have marked some words in red. The words that I marked in red, if you delete everything, if you keep only the red words, that would actually allow you to do a much shorter presentation. If I were to shorten this presentation to the essence of what it is, I would keep those words that are marked in red and then rework them and make them sort of cohesive. And notice, for example, how he introduces photonics. Electronics is simply too slow. Enter photonics. I mean, I love that. I mean, that totally makes up for that incredibly long sentence towards the end there.
I think that was, if I remember correctly, I think that might have been your suggestion. But yes, that was a great one, and it was something that was picked out by some of my family members too. That they kind of like that transition.
Yeah, and look how disarming it is. So what's the problem? I mean, he disarms every time he talks about something that sounds vaguely technical. He disarms you. He disarms you with, "Don't worry about it." He's really disarming you in a way that you don't even notice. It's not noticeable. You just feel comfortable. So my view is that Connor, and by the way, introducing himself at the beginning, very clear, easy. It's easy on the ear. It's confident. He's talking in a business-like manner. Who here is a musician? Then he kind of waits for a few beats there. A few people, he looks around and he actually engages with the audience. Can anyone play this piece? I mean, even the piece doesn't intimidate. I mean, Chopin should be intimidating everybody, right? So Chopin would be incredibly intimidating, but he just presents it as if, oh, well, can anyone play this piece? Meaning, he says it in a manner that sort of says, don't worry if you can't. No big deal. Anyway, enough said there. Anyone want to jump in on my comments?
I just want to talk about the overall delivery. I'd say one of the best kind of feelings that I get when watching the 3MT is just the level of comfort that Connor has. He's incredibly comfortable in his subject matter. And I think that singular fact applies to everyone in their research. Your research is your baby. You're working on this for countless hours, for multiple years at times. It's just trying to convey that is a bit more difficult. But Connor does such an amazing job where he's just very comfortable in what he's talking about. And that comfort then kind of elicits this confidence and also delivers this tremendous pace. And so even if it's at 377 words, because Connor, you're so comfortable up there on stage, you actually don't notice that you're going, a bit faster than usual, for example, because you're so comfortable and so confident, and everyone also, digests that very easily. So just kind of a overall comment on the delivery aspect of the presentation.
Yeah. And there's also a lot of repetition, a very, very subtle repetition of concepts. And again, I just want to draw your attention. There may be a few long words there, but a lot of those words are very short. I haven't counted the number of characters in here. Maybe I should count the number of characters as well. Tim, anything you want to add to that before we move on?
I was just going to say, I think Erin might have a point that's probably a little bit more pressing than mine.
Oh, yeah, I sort of wanted to shift gears a bit and ask Connor to expand a bit on the way that he prepared for delivering the speech in such a manner that was so comfortable. You mentioned briefly that your family agreed with one of the changes. So I take it you delivered the speech to your family before getting on stage?
I did a few times, and I think the most important thing was leading up to the EMT, the competition. I probably practiced this by myself maybe 40, 50 times. So I would just go over and over and over again, and I'd finish it, and then I'd just start right over again. And that really, if you're not thinking about the script, then you can be thinking about how you're presenting. And I think that's really the key. Another thing, like Nick mentioned, I learned from previous experiences in presenting that when you work on something, it's in your comfort zone. When you present it, it's not stepping out of your comfort zone. Your job is to bring people into your comfort zone. And so if you can make everyone see it the way you see it, then that's kind of, it helps a bit to feel more comfortable when presenting.
Yeah. By the way, those people in the front there, those are the judges, the ones right in front of him. Those are those heads of the judges. So the judges were literally right there below him. So he was looking down at the judges, making eye contact, in fact. And then when he asked a question of the audience, he would look up to where the audience was. So it's great presentation. Megan, I understand you may have to leave us shortly. Just thank you for joining us. I just, always happy to have you on board. And whenever you leave, just say goodbye or whatever. And happy to have you here.
Sounds good. Thank you. I still have a few more minutes, so I'll hang around for about 5 more.
Do hang around. It won't get boring until a little bit closer to the end. So thanks so much. Anyway, and stay with us, Connor, as well, and help us with some of the other things that we're going to be talking about. And again, language, articulation, pronunciation. I mean, look at what I've said here. This is really what we were talking about, both with Connor and with Mahmoud, both of them. Choose the opening words carefully. Choose words carefully. Choose metaphors carefully. Not sure, I guess Connor did have a metaphor, and that was the Chopin music, in a sense. That was his metaphor. Repeat troublesome, unexpected, or important words. In other words, be redundant. And Connor has a very clever way of doing that. So again, please interrupt me. Just jump in anywhere here if any of these things, if you want to add to anything that I'm saying here. Don't rush. And I think that one thing that's true of both Connor and Mahmoud is they look comfortable. They're not rushing. They don't seem to be running against the clock. Don't swallow words. Every single word of Connor's is crystal clear. I don't think there's a single word that Connor utters that doesn't sort of, at least to my ears, come through clearly. And same is true with Mahmoud as well. Don't sabotage your name. They do not sabotage their name. Their names are also very clear. Anyone want to jump in with anything there that unmute yourselves?
Something that I wanted to comment on avoiding being ill-prepared and also piggybacking off of something that Connor mentioned about the comfort zone. So I found that a good way to enhance your comfort zone and extend it is to, when you are practicing, not only practice in one spot, otherwise you get too comfortable in that one spot. And as soon as you go somewhere else or your environment's a little bit different, or that there are many people watching you over a Zoom call, your comfort zone crumples and you don't feel like you're in it anymore, and you may feel ill-prepared and you may not deliver your speech the best you can. So something that I found really helpful when preparing for presentations such as this is to practice in different spots and practice around different people, such as your family members, your friends, anybody who will listen.
Anybody, that's right. Yeah, right. Do what the
Can I just follow up on
ahead.
that?
Go ahead.
I think this is a good suggestion for the second phase of your practice, not the first phase. But I think the most distracting and the audience that will make you feel the most uncomfortable is the bathroom mirror. If you try and give your talk in front of the bathroom mirror, that is an incredibly awkward audience to be able to give a presentation in front of. Again, I don't recommend that you do that for your first practice, but once you become more confident, do your talk in front of the bathroom mirror. It's challenging, but it'll really help you build that confidence.
Yeah, all good words, all good words. So jargon, some of you may be reading this stuff off the screen here. Look at what I regard as extreme jargon. Look what I regard as words that are misunderstood. Things in that middle column, you sometimes hear them in everyday conversation, highly misunderstood. And things that are in more general usage, words like frequency, and of course Connor did use the word frequency, but I think he emphasized it. He put it into an incredibly easy to understand context. Words like metadata and Bluetooth are thrown about, but if you put that in context that's difficult to understand, then you're not succeeding. So beware about any jargon that you think you have to use. Keep slides simple. And I usually suggest developing the slide first. Connor, did you select your slide first, or did it come as an afterthought?
It was definitely first.
Came first, yeah. Everything kind of works around that eventually, right? Like Daniel Tajik's blueberries, and that has mystery right away. What's a blueberry doing in a presentation on microwave on breast cancer detection? So, and he doesn't really address what the blueberry is doing in the slide until about halfway through his presentation. So there is mystery. He's got mystery in that. Here's more mystery. Sniffing out weapons with microwaves, and again, this is, it allows the audience will use its own biases and background and experiences to kind of reverse engineer what's going on in this slide. Hans Eugene, her video, her 3-minute thesis video is a really incredible video. Would love to keep playing that as well. That's something that could be played endlessly as well. And she has a crumpled piece of paper to talk about something that's actually quite mathematical. Mahmoud Waghi has an umbrella and a bunch of glasses. So core images, make them memorable, make them memorable, core images. And there's a core image, sheet music by Chopin that Connor Rowe put in, and water glasses under an umbrella, Mahmoud Waghi, a tarantula, Aline, not a real tarantula, but anyway, what looks like a tarantula, and the blueberry and so on. So
I want to hop in on this slide, and just so that everyone's clear as well, is that oftentimes you think, okay, I'm going to present my research. That means I need, a picture of my research. That's not necessarily the case. You can definitely go that route, but you look at these images, or you look at these words right here on the content on the slides themselves. Sometimes they relate more to the metaphor or the story that you're trying to convey rather than your research. So I just kind of wanted to allude to that and saying you can go your research route or you can go that metaphor imagery route. It's totally up to you.
Right. And a picture that you take yourself, a personal picture, something that you have personally selected that has an element of yourself rather than somebody else. It makes a big difference. It'll make a big difference. Titles, here are some catchy titles. Now, Connor, you didn't have a very catchy title.
Yes, that's true. And that might have been the only thing I probably should have changed about the presentation. Yeah. Well, one of the only things. I mean, it's probably the biggest thing that should have changed. I should have chosen something that kind of went along with my analogy. And yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, but I just as I say, sorry to criticize you, but you are here. But I think both of them are incredibly slow. And everything helps, but you don't have to overdo it. You don't have to be over the top gimmicky either, right? But look at this: fighting obesity with fat. Where does cancer begin? Are we drinking pharmaceuticals? These are catchy titles that kind of also may have a little bit of mystery or drama involved in them. Opening lines. Let's look at the opening line by Daniel Tajik. X-rays cause cancer. It's a little unnerving to think about, isn't it? Now that's a colloquial way of saying the more a person undergoes X-ray scans, the greater the risk they will develop cancer. So that sentence in italics might be something you put into a technical paper. Sounds more like a technical paper. Or look at the one by Kanchu Zhang. Occurring with little apparent warning, strokes are a leading cause of disability. I mean, that's nothing wrong with that. We can all understand that. But she makes it immediately relevant to you. Have you, your relatives, your friends ever suffered from a stroke? So rather than something that is kind of neutral, hands-off, impartial, if you like, can't you just go straight in to make it relevant to every single person in the audience? Anybody want to jump in on those opening lines?
I'll jump in with a bit of a comment. And
Sure.
The introduction is so crucial to your presentation because, like Dr. Bandler said, it's your chance at the first impression. And so you want to captivate your audience right away. So I often suggest that this is where you're going to spend a bulk of your time in the initial stages, because you want something attention grabbing. You want to evoke some imagery. You want to reel the audience in. And even in Connor's case, you started with your name, and then what did you go into right after that? Who here is a musician, right? So you want kind of that attention grabbing. You want to reel them in, for example, right at the start. Very crucial, because that's what's going to help them buy into what you're going to say later on, basically.
And don't forget, in Connor's case, well, he was introducing himself, but that was in a way completely at odds with his slide. The slide there was a complete contra, a piece of Chopin music that you saw right away at the beginning, and then he introduces himself. So the idea is now there's a real dilemma. How on earth is this person who's introducing himself, being in Montreal at a research institute, what on earth does that have to do with a Chopin nocturne? So there's that element, there's that tension between him and the music that's already active. So
can I just jump in here and just sort of say that the biggest thing that I have changed since I have been associated with these talks is thinking about the opening line of anything that I say. I never used to really think about it that much, but now, having been here and seen the impact, that's really changed my thinking on how I craft some of the things to say, even when I stand up in lectures and things like that. Even when I say things informally, I think a lot more about the first sentence that I say than I ever have before.
Right. Erin, do you think, what about you? What sort of, when you go into a new class with students that have never seen you before, do you start off with a bang? Do you hit the ground running?
I don't know what that means in the context of delivering lectures about math, but No, I think in the discipline that I teach in, it's important to acknowledge the anxieties that people bring to the room with them about mathematics, just being in a course title. So I think I start things off a bit differently. I tend to start at the beginning, bare bones, right? Do you ever observe how this happens? And then once I can get us all on the same page, I go from there. This is very different than what you're going to be doing in a 3MT talk, though, right? I guess the element that's shared is finding common ground with your audience, which is what you always want to do anyway, if you care that they understand what you have to say, and you want to pretend you do for your 3MT competition.
Well, what you're saying is, if I paraphrasing, is that you make the audience try to make the audience feel comfortable, or your students feel comfortable initially, not frightened.
I think that that's true. Yeah, that's true.
Okay.
In math, I think that a lot more people tend to be frightened just by that word than do by hearing words about electrical engineering applications, right? I mean, we all have cell phones in our pockets. If somebody has something about cell phones in their title, if somebody has something about sensing in their title, I think that makes the audience more receptive off the bat. I think they can identify some sort of common ground themselves.
Yeah.
But I think when I walk into an intro stats class with people who are thrilled to be taking the last math class of their life, I've got to do something different.
Right. Okay, so bringing your story full circle. For example, let's take Mahmoud Wadi. Imagine if all the rain was wasted. That doesn't sound right. Thankfully, it doesn't really happen to rain. And then he ends with, my goal is to get you to forget about your batteries, but please don't forget about your umbrellas. So that is a nice way to bookend. And in a way, Connor also does a bookend, but he does it in a different way. His is more of what I would say teamwork between his slide and his opening introduction. So that slide and the opening introduction is bookended by his final words. So his slide is quite key to bookending the story in Connor's case. For example, in Daniel Tajik's case, the blueberries do not bookend the story. So anyway, it's all about the details. Now, we're going to jump a little bit into the weeds here. We're going to be battling with online limitations. And you may have experienced some of these things already: camera resolution, microphone quality, and we're going to have to be working with that in our coaching sessions, and then finally in our event on April the 12th. Now, I would strongly recommend no more than 110 words per minute. In the documents that we're going to be sending you, you'll see a limit of 300 words per minute, 300 words total. Some suggestions, and again, co-presenters and guests do jump in on any of this thing. Start early on your core image. Start on your title early. Start on your core image early. Don't think of your slide or your image as a decoration. It has to work. It's going to be there the whole time, and it has to work. Avoid generalities. Be very specific. And rehearse with people who haven't heard you before, if at all possible. That's difficult, because once somebody has heard you present once and you do it a second time, it isn't quite the same thing. For example, Connor, you know, the judges had never seen you before. They'd never heard you before. So you had to make that mark the first time. You had only one chance to do that. So don't look like you're reading a script. Make eye contact. And in terms of an online presentation, I know we tend to look down at our screen or look at our second monitor over here, which is in my case over here. But when you're making a presentation like the one we're talking about, look into the camera. Do not look at your monitor or your screen. Listen to the audience, listen to yourself. Be aware that there are people actually watching you and hearing you. And, you know, part of your brain should somehow be devoted to a clone of yourself in the audience listening to you. Be in the moment, and what that means is if you feel that you've fumbled a particular word or phrase, don't be afraid to repeat it. Don't be afraid to say it again. Be a little bit more emphatic the next time around. And let me say, Connor, you did kind of stumble a couple of times here and there, which is not obvious in real time in a live presentation. That is instantly forgiven. Nobody even thinks about it. But when you watch a video over and over and over again, it jumps out at you. But the judges would never have taken those things into account. Dress is important. We'll be talking about things like that. Articulate every single word clearly, including your name. Assume that the person you are talking to doesn't know who you are and has never heard of you, doesn't understand your name. Script redundancies. Again, repetition. Use a Bluetooth mic for freedom of movement. I mean, you might be tethered to your computer with a cable, but try to avoid that. Again, don't look at the screen. Keep your camera at eye level. Don't look down at the camera, and don't look up at the camera. If you know, more or less, where most of our guests right now, Tim and Nick and Erin and Connor, you know, vertical lines behind you should preferably be vertical. It just gives a better impression than if you're if you're looking up or you're looking down. And definitely look away to signal thinking in real time. I mean, there's nothing wrong with looking away from the camera. You don't have to stare fixedly into the camera. It's one thing I don't like quite about Mahmoud Wagi now and then. He tends to be a little bit fixated on the camera. Would have been nice to have broken that connection a little bit. Acknowledge a distraction in real time. If a canary or your cat jumps into your lap, build that into your presentation. I mean, it's there. Don't ignore it. A cat suddenly jumps at you. Don't keep going as if nothing had happened. It makes strange. Let your hands be visible, okay? Don't be just a little head. Hands and elbows and so on be visible. Compose your space. Be in a space that, you know, is sort of neutral but workable. I would avoid virtual backdrops if you can. And please rehearse, record yourself, watch yourself, rehearse, record, watch. We all hate how we look. We all hate how we sound. But we do, everybody does. I haven't met anybody who, oh, I love my voice. I haven't met anybody who loves their own voice. So don't be afraid to do that. First impressions. Your live audience and judges, they hear your host's introduction. So I would strongly suggest you do always introduce yourself. Don't allow the host of a meeting to what is the word? Destroy your name, and then you just let the audience accept it. To just assume that you will always introduce yourself the way that you want to be remembered. And of course, in live judges will like as Connor had, they will be taking into account the kind of murmurs and shuffling that there is in the background and how the other judges are behaving. A little bit different for an online event like this. Absorbing audience reaction is a little harder on a Zoom call. So be yourself. Don't be somebody phony. Don't act. Don't pretend. Be yourself. For some strange reason, as soon as you ask somebody to make a speech, they go into speech mode. Okay, so you'll find that during the coaching sessions, we're going to be having conversations. I'm going to be trying to make your presentation as conversational as possible. So kill your fake speech mode. Unless that's your normal, normal voice. Be approachable, be in the moment, be memorable. And I think Connor certainly comes across very strongly in these and with these criteria. Skip jargon and mind-twisting logic. Keep sentences short and punchy. And again, Connor does well on that. They're very direct. Speak words clean, crisp, and clear. I couldn't have, I wrote this script for you, Connor, there. Make eye contact with the audience. Now, you know, when you're in a room, you don't want to be looking at the ceiling or out the window. You want to be looking at people. Now, you may need to look away to sort of think about, somebody asks you a question, you look away for the moment to kind of think, and then you look back at them. Nothing wrong with that. There's nothing fake about that. That's okay. We all do that. But make eye contact as much as possible. Gesture with open, unthreatening hands. Don't do this, and don't fidget. Don't rock around. Don't rock. A lot of people rock, and that's true not just online, but in person. You see people doing this thing the whole time when they're doing a presentation. That's very distracting to the audience. Presentation day is April the 12th. By the way, at this particular point, audience members, students, by all means, unmute yourself and ask questions, please. You've been very quiet. There's a chat item in chat there, Nick. Have you caught that?
Yeah, yes, that was just Megan letting us know that she was.
Oh, okay, that's good. Okay. So presentation will be on April the 12th. We'll probably divide the entire class into two groups. If there's around 30 people or so, we may have to put you into two groups. So the slide deck that we will create for the event will consist of this slide, as you can see here, in a 4x3 format. And we're going to be sending you templates of the slides to put in a title, your name, and so on. So all of this will be provided to you. You provide your 4x3 slide. Okay, you will provide that yourself. The reason for 4x3 is that it looks nice when we tuck that into a 16:9 video. So we've selected 4x3 for quite a while. It seems to work very well, and that's a transition slide between two speakers, one that you're looking at right now. We will provide all of this. We'll have 2 or 3 Zoom meetings per week, and please share slides and scripts, talk to each other, meet with each other, meet with us, with Dr. Davidson, Nick, and myself. We'll get lots of feedback, and initially we're going to be asking you for a script. We do plan to have a couple of in-person meetings so we can go over what this might look like if we were doing this in person. This would be typically in room ITB A113, and that'll be around the end of March, start of April, once you are in a position where you've memorized your talks. So for our virtual 3MT, keep the slides simple, no jargon, one main image, avoid abbreviations, avoid words except your name and the title of presentation, and please do have citations. If you are grabbing images that are not obviously somebody else's, do cite the source of the image. We plan to have Zoom meetings in the next few days on March the 2nd, 7th, and 9th at 10 a.m. And please submit 4x3 slides and your scripts. Well, of course, the scripts don't have to be 4x3, obviously. Scripts are obviously a Word document by Tuesday, March the 7th. So at this stage, you should have some burning questions. 300 words. You will be reminded of this by email. 300 words, 4x3 slide. And this is something, Nick, why don't you speak to the technical abstract?
Yes, so one of the things we found definitely last year in helping craft your script, one thing that would really help Dr. Bandler, myself, and Dr. Davidson, as we'll be working with you and coaching with you in the first few Zoom sessions, is that if you can provide us with a technical abstract of what your research is, because you have the advantage here of you have 3 individuals that are in the electrical and computer engineering department that can understand some technical aspects. So provide us with some indication on technically what you're doing, and then also provide us with your creative piece, your draft that you wish to submit for the 3MT. And if there's any disconnect that may be occurring between your creative piece and your technical abstract, well, that's what we're here for, to help bridge that gap.
Yeah, I think that's a good addition, because we found a lot. We keep finding that the speakers tend to lose track of the technical problems that they're solving, and we want to be able to have a reference of this is what the technical aspect of the work is, so that we can constantly refer back if necessary. Because sometimes we get too many metaphors, we get scripts that are full of metaphors, and we completely lose sight of what the actual technical problem is. We have a Dropbox link for uploading material, and in a certain format that you will again be reminded of by email. And 3 of us, Nick, Tim, and myself, will be available for consultation. Anyone to ask some questions?
I think we have a few individuals who are unmuted. Are you waiting to ask a question, or is it more, yeah, you forgot to mute? Anybody? No? Okay, I guess continue onwards, Dr. Bandler.
Okay, there are some some YouTube playlists, particularly the MTT IMS YouTube channel, and our own department now. We have amassed quite a number of videos over the last 2 or 3 years. You'd be quite surprised how many of them, and actually how good they are. They're really, I'm just amazed constantly by the quality of the work that our department is able to produce. Look at my YouTube channel for all kinds of workshops that I've been involved in, and also IEEE Microwave Magazine articles that you will find that talk about the 3-minute thesis. Erin, do you have any last minute encouragement, and Tim, last minute encouragement to the students?
Yeah, I would say that you're embarking on a process that will leave you better prepared to pursue your professional ambitions. It's not every graduate program that is thoughtful enough to include this kind of programming for its students. So you're very lucky to be where you are. You're very lucky to be working with the people who want to support you through this process. Also just have fun with this. This is an opportunity for you to explain your research to people who are deeply curious about it and who want to understand it. You won't always be lucky enough to have an audience full of people who want to understand you. So do just have fun with this opportunity.
Yeah, thanks, Erin. Yeah, really, have fun. As I say, it is hard work. You'll be amazed by how difficult it is. It is more difficult than you might imagine. Creative writing is often dismissed as something that's sort of very soft subject. Anybody can do it. People go for years to journalism school. There are graduate programs in creative writing. It's not easy. I got involved in creative writing about 23 years ago. And it's the hardest thing that I ever did. To me, it was harder learning how to do creative writing than to go through an engineering program. It's really difficult. But you can have fun. You'll have so much fun when you realize, oh my God, did I really do this? Did I really write this? Did I really actually achieve this? Connor, what was your process? Are you a creative writer yourself?
I definitely do like reading. In terms of writing, I haven't done too much, but I would say that the process of coming up with these analogies for a whole bunch of technical terms that you're not allowed, well, that you can't communicate, was really, really worth it. Because now, in a sense, I actually it brought me to a better understanding of my own work, I would say.
Do you think that this will influence the way your technical presentations going forward?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Like I mentioned at the very start, it's the perfect test for communication. And so it checks off all the boxes of proper communication, which means if you're missing one thing, that will be evident. Whereas in a longer technical talk, you can kind of get away with, missing one or two skills, but it will definitely improve every aspect of communication.
Yeah. So all of these things are useful in job applications, in interviews, across the desk interviews, one-on-one interviews. And one of the things that I would like to make I'd like to make you aware of how you are seen. How you are seen depending upon what you say, what you might be wearing. I know it may be politically incorrect to talk about dress, but no one has complained about anything I've said so far, at least not that I know. And so, so what can I say? I think knowing, the thing about human beings is you can write down all the rules that you like. You mustn't do this, you mustn't say this, you mustn't do this, you mustn't do that. But fortunately, we're still allowed to think whatever we want. Our thought processes are completely unrestrained, or could be, or should. I mean, why not? If you're going to be a creative writer, you should certainly not have any constraints in your mind about stories and so on. So in knowing that, how you may be received by others may be quite different from what is politically correct. People will give you this reason for why they rejected you, and that reason has nothing to do with reality. What is the reality? So we want to be able to create a reality that projects us, gives us the best possible projection to an audience, be it technical or general audience. On the other hand, we also want to be truthful, authentic, and ethical. So there's a lot of stuff to balance there. I mean, Connor Rowe could easily be selling us a refrigerator. Well, right? Oh, I mean, Erin, see, where did that? I mean, you see,
I got the same comment though once. I was speaking to a professor at a conference, and he's like, "Wow, you look very corporate," and I was like, "Oh, thank you," and he's like, "It wasn't really a compliment." But yeah, I know what you mean. People, there's all these studies that show, people have made up their minds almost as soon as they see you for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah,
it would be nice if that wasn't the case, but unfortunately it is. So
yeah. So Erin, why did you scowl when I said that?
Because I was just so taken aback. I think it's important to point out we have had at the IMS 3MT winners who have done so wearing a suit and tie, where they paid very much attention to whether they rolled their sleeves up or not, and to matching the color of their shirt to the color of their slide. We've had winners who've done that, but we have also had finalists who have taken the stage in a t-shirt and cargo shorts. Do you remember Adrian Teng from JPL, who blew us all away? I think the important thing is to be impeccable in your delivery. This is absolutely number one. The comments about first impressions and about people rejecting your message on, on the basis of a first impression, but telling you it's for other reasons. This is all true, but I think that the audience that you're pitching to realizes that especially engineers and especially people in academia have eccentric styles of dress. And I think that as long as you don't come in looking like you've just been cleaning out a chicken coop, then I think you can be received well.
Yeah. And Erin knows a lot about chicken coops. I can vouch for that.
I do, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a good point to make. It's more than about what you wear, it's about being coherent. So if I was to go up in, a three-piece suit and then speak super casually, it might not look coherent. And so if your presentation goes along with how you are as a person, if you're authentic in that way that you mentioned, then I think it'll work out.
Yeah. Yeah, authenticity, sincerity, and you're empathizing with the audience. I think that you can empathize dressed in almost any way you like, right? So, audience members, we're going to be drawing this thing to a close shortly, and you will receive an email about the next few sessions going forward. Anyone want to unmute and say something? Don't be shy. This is your opportunity. You may never see Connor or Erin again.
I'm waiting for the invitation to the final presentations.
Oh,
by the
yes.
way.
Okay. Yeah, that's true. In fact, Erin, it will be one of the judges at the closing. So maybe we shouldn't bias her in this case. Well, listen. Hope to see most of you on Thursday at 10 o'clock, if you can make it. And Connor, really appreciate your input here. And sorry, I may have said a few kind of over-the-top things like refrigerator and
No, I'm absolutely honored to be here. And
everything's good.
Everything's good.
Congratulations on your win. I think that was really good. There are so many other aspects. There's so many other aspects of your presentation that we don't have time to go into here, but there's much more to it that I would love to be able to talk about. And I will probably be talking to the students about other aspects of your presentation as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, good. Erin, final words.
I think I said to have fun with this process. It's
Yes.
You're very lucky to be going through it, and I hope that you feel that way too. I know that by the end of it, you'll feel that way. So,
Yeah.
I can't wait to see you all at the end.
Yeah. Tim, any final words?
Yeah, I think this is just a wonderful opportunity, and I encourage you to take a moment to look back once you're at the end. Think about where you are now, and look back when you get there. It's going to be an incredible difference, and something that's of lifetime's worth of value.
Thank you, Tim. Okay, so we'll say goodbye to everybody. Then maybe Nick and Tim, we can stay online and to have a little post-mortem. And so thank you, Connor. Thank you, Erin. We'll be in touch.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you, audience.